In this video, I'm going to give you some ideas where to find threads and what to do with them, how to use them, how to measure them, and how to dye them. Now, Colleen uses number 10 crochet cotton, and that's this. There are two different kinds of crochet cotton. One is the mercerized, and the others is this, and it's not shiny. It's not. This is, I think, pearl floss, and you can tell it has a sheen to it, and this doesn't. This just looks very much like a piece of cotton string. Now, this is, let's see if I can do it. This is this off the bolt, and I've actually dyed a piece for you, and that's the difference. Now, you can't really see it, but it does thicken up a bit. Let's see if I can put this, and then maybe this. It's difficult to see. Okay, maybe you can see there. It does thicken up a bit when you dye it. There again, it's cotton and it doesn't take dye well. This piece I've done probably twice. I have a batch in the dye pot now that's the third time that it's been in. The thread for my Mrs. Brown set, that I probably will have to do 4 or 5 times before I get that dark brown that I want. So it's not an easy process. It takes a lot of time. But these are some places where you can find different threads to do. First, I'll go over that, and then I'll give you some tips on how to do them and how to dye them and that sort of thing. My threads, many years ago when I first started, we lived across the road from a general store. It was one of the old-fashioned general stores. It had the meat counter where you weighed out your meat and then you wrapped it in the brown paper, and these spools were on the ceiling and dropped down, and you tied your meat and other things, and it would have paints, and it would have work gloves and work boots and all sorts of different things, just a regular old-fashioned general store. And he would order in my string. And quite a few years later, he decided he was going to sell the store, and when he did, I bought as much as I could afford. I bought it in bulk, and as many of these as I could afford. So I'm still actually using on some of those, and that is some of the string that I use in my kits. Sometimes I find string. Now I found this, and that's a lot of string. It's thicker. I'll show you. As compared to this, it's quite a bit thicker. You can see. And these are good in the tongue rugs. You need something thick, but you also need something that you don't have a dense wool to pull that thread through. That string. I have to cut this somewhere. This is there. It's DMC Baroque, 100% crochet cotton. This is mercerized and color fast, and I just got the white. Now that's very similar to this, a little bit thinner, you can see, but this would work well. It would dye. It's not that shiny really, even though it is mercerized, so you can buy new. If I happen upon anything, I hoard string just like I hoard wool, and I have all sorts of different kinds. This is another spool that I've found somewhere, and it's a bit corded. I haven't used any off that, but. And then you can also find colors. I had a lot of this, and I used it for the Avery's Kitty, Hey Kitty Kitty. I used it for that. I dyed it over. Wool. Now, the thing with wool is you need to have wool that's strong. You need to have it really strong, because as you pull it through over and over, your cottons and your wool, it shreds. And you don't want that. You want something that's going to hold up for all of your stitching completely around your penny. You don't want to have to stop and start in a penny. And don't worry so much about colors if you can find them or pick them up. I think this probably is some sort of weaving. It has something to do with weaving, and I think probably most of the threads that you can buy for weaving would work quite well to stitch penny rugs. This is a very old one. It's a cotton yarn, and you can see. There. These will go brown very easily and very quickly. If you start with a color like this, sometimes you only need to dye it once to get a good color. So don't be afraid of colors. Maybe possibly you like colors to dye them better than the whites, but I have a lot of whites, and as I say, with the whites, you need to dye them over and over and over to layer the color, just as you do with your cotton bases. This is another one, just something I found, and this is nice too. And that would be very nice. Just once in the dye pot, and that would come out nice. Now, I'm going to stop it here and get ready to show you the next section, which is going to be how to cut your string, how to measure it, and how to put it together to dye it. In this part of the video, I'm going to show you where you probably already have string and you don't know it, that you can dye and use to make the penny rugs. Those of you that, those of you that hook rugs, I'm quite sure this is Monk's cloth, but I don't know. I'm not positive. I didn't buy it. It was given to me by my friend Steph, who was repaired rugs. And this is all you do to get some string. You just pull it. And it gets a string both ways. I have a long piece, so just take me a couple of minutes. There. And it's in two pieces when you bring it out. I'll show you. It's in two pieces. There. And you also have it this way, which is a bit thicker. Well, you see, a little bit thicker, but not much. So this would be very similar to, or even a bit thicker than what you're doing your rugs with. That's thin. Not probably almost as thick as this. Maybe a little bit less than the regular number 10 crochet cotton. And you have it quite easily. You just need to pull it. And now, the great thing about that is Years ago I made a rug. It was called Never Ending Rug. And this was my backing. And I think Edie has the rug. And what I did was I dyed my backing the color that I wanted. And then I pulled my threads. And there's one of the threads. And that's what I stitched my rug with. It works same color. It has, you have light and darks because you have light and dark in the, so these are darker threads, these are lighter threads. And it works really nice. And it's much easier to dye a piece of fabric or a piece of your monk's cloth or whatever than it is to take these strings and to put them all together and tie them from a large bolt like this, and then put them in the dye bath 2 or 3 times. It's much easier to handle a piece of fabric than to take your string and cut it and then put your little pieces in so that we put these, as you know, we put little pieces in to keep it together, and then what you do is you just pull a thread out. So it's much easier to have it all together and dye the fabric. However, there is a trick to this that you need to know if you're using fabric as string, or if you're using a base and taking some of the string to use as threads. When I do these long strips of threads and I pull one, just pull it out very easily. And then I cut it in half. These are so nice and thin. And then I cut it in half. One of those pieces will do 2 1.5-inch pennies or 2 2-inch pennies. You have a bit of waste for the 1.5-inch, but that is how I measure my string, so there's no waste. Now what you would do is everyone stitches differently, so you would measure your thread to see how much you need for a needle, whatever you would put on your needle. I don't thread my needle for every penny. I like to do 2 to a needle. I can do 4 of the smaller ones to a needle. So first you measure what you need to thread on your needle. Then you need to have your cloth, however you're going to take the string out, you need to have your cloth that length so that when you pull a string, it's going to be the right length to thread your needle. So that's very important, because you just can't take a piece of cotton and if you have a small mat, just cut a small piece and then use the threads, because you would be forever threading that needle. So that is what you do. You measure for a needle of thread what's comfortable to you. Put it in the dye pot, dye it to whatever color you want, and then just take your threads off. And you can actually take them off as you use them. You don't need to take them off and put them in this or whatever. Just take a few off and thread your needle, and go get another few, and that type of thing. And it's so easy, not at all difficult, and it's the best possible way to dye and aid your threads. So I think that's probably it for the threads. Just remember to find your threads wherever you can. The fabric is the easiest way, and it will probably give you the nicest thread. Very soft, very nice. Don't worry about having it white on your, and having it in spools, because this is so difficult. First, you need, the same as you did with your fabric, you need to know how much you are going to thread on a needle. Then you need to measure it, and then you keep going and going and going. Then you need to tie it off. It's just a lot of work, and this is so much easier, and it will give you just as nice a rug. Very nice threads. So next, we've done the threads, we've done the bases. I will do a video on just dyeing techniques, things to do and little tips. So I think next we're going to, I'm going to show you how to thread needles easily. And that'll be the next part of the video. In this part of the video, we're going to go over a little bit about needles and how to thread them. It never really occurred to me to do this on video. I've been doing it for so long that I actually don't remember what it's like to be a beginner and not know these things. So first I'm going to, this is the regular string that many of you use and I put in my kits. First we're going to pull a thread. So you just take one thread and you just pull. And you just keep taking that tail on the other end, this, and you just keep bringing it out, and you have a thread. Now this thread you will cut in half, or I do. It does depend on how close and how you do the blanket stitches and some of the other stitches. There are some stitches that require a longer thread to go around the penny, and the thing is, you really should have enough thread on your needle to completely go around the penny and not stop and start while you're doing the circle. Just do the circle, stop, and stay your stitch, and then that's it. So to me, one of these strings I cut in half, pull a string, cut it in half, and now I thread my needle. The other thing is, depending on how I do the string, sometimes it's a bit stiff. So this is what you do. Take it in between your thumb or one of your nails, and you just go like this. You just keep going along a couple times, and it softens the thread up so that it will work much better and you will be able to stitch it more easily. And just keep doing that a couple times if you find you have a problem and it's stiff. There. Now, the size of needles, really, honestly, I really don't bother with the size. Colleen has sent me her favorites, the size 20 John James chenille and the size 22. And I have those, and I use those. And let's see, those are these. They have a sharp point, which is what you need. Sometimes, most of the time, you need a sharp point, and I will go over when you do and when you don't necessarily need a sharp point. It has a large eye, there, but you really don't need that large an eye to put the string through. You just need to know how to thread the needle. See, I have those, and let's see if I can get it on camera. There's not a very large eye. Let's see. There, I wonder if that works. So difficult to do this. So I will show you how to do that. I have one here, and as you can see, it doesn't have a large eye. And this is a must. Absolutely a must is a needle threader. I could not do without them, and I could never use my string without them. And they're not expensive. They're $1 and something for 4, I think it is, and you find them everywhere, even in corner stores you'll find them. So, and also a needle threader like this is not going to work. You need something very thin because you have 2 thicknesses of the string to pull through. So let's thread a needle. Let's see, yeah, okay. I put it through, and I did not know that there were 2 different sides to a needle when you're threading it. And I thread it through, and here it goes. Just as easy as that. These do not last long, of course. I go through so many of them, I buy them a box at a time at a little general store. I knot the thread, and I'm ready to go. And it doesn't take a large eye, but it's a nice sharp point, and it's not an expensive needle. I think it was in one of these just general kits that you buy with multi sizes of needles. So that is how to thread the needle, how to use the string, and of course the thinner string that's with your other kits, you can use any type needle. That's just a small needle, whatever type, because it's very much the size of 1 or 2 strands or 3 strands of floss, depending. Now, you will need a sharp point on your needle when you are going through a cotton that is has a very high thread content. And also, surprisingly, this works very well. It doesn't. It doesn't have a lot of open in the weave, but still it does work. And this is where you can use a blunt needle, a different size needle, because it's so easy. Just goes through. And many of your rug backings, if you're using those, you don't worry about the needle. Also with wool, I use a pointed needle, but there are times when, if it's an open weave wool, you know, it's not dense, you can just, don't worry about the needle. So the trick to the string is doing it a couple times to make it softer, and these. Absolutely, these are a must. So that is about it for the needles and thread. I do have websites that I will post on the group, and it's very good information. Many things that I didn't know about needles, and probably some things that you didn't know as well. So I hope you enjoyed this video. We have the next video is going to be stacking the pennies.